Have you ever been so completely absorbed in something that, I don't know, hours just felt like minutes?
Oh, yeah.
Where the world just sort of fades away and you feel completely alive, capable, happy, just by doing that one thing.
Totally. That feeling, that state of deep engagement, it has a name.
It does. And it holds, well, a really powerful key, not just for personal happiness, but also for understanding human potential, even perhaps the evolution of consciousness itself.
It's that state of profound engagement, where your skills are perfectly matched to whatever challenge you're facing, and your attention is just laser focused. You feel totally at one with the activity.
It's often considered like the peak of human experience, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And it's precisely what we're diving into today. Our deep dive is into the really groundbreaking work of a truly pioneering thinker, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. We spent a lot of time combing through his collected works, especially focusing on his core concept of flow to pull out the most profound and hopefully actionable insights for you.
Yeah, the goal isn't just to define flow in some abstract way.
Right.
It's about helping you really grasp what it means for your daily life. Understanding, when, where, how you can apply these principles.
Right. To get more enjoyment out of things, maybe boost your creativity, and ultimately live a more fulfilling, engaged kind of existence.
We'll look at his really remarkable personal story, which is foundational.
Definitely.
And understand the innovative scientific methods he had to develop to even study these, pretty elusive experiences.
Yeah. How do you measure something like that?
Exactly. And then we'll explore the implications, which are pretty far-reaching, both for us as individuals and maybe for society as a whole.
At its heart, this whole concept of flow, it seems to address a fundamental human problem, doesn't it?
It really does. How do people maintain their integrity, find real enjoyment, deep meaning, even when things outside are just terrible?
Yeah.
Csikszentmihalyi's own experiences growing up during and after World War II really spurred that question for him. He saw people enduring unimaginable hardship, and he wondered, what sources of strength were these people drawing on?
Wow.
He wanted to uncover that underlying answer, how consciously engaging your attention, focusing your mind, could give you that profound sense of purpose, no matter what's happening around you.
That deeply personal quest
Yeah.
really clarifies his motivation, doesn't it? Let's unpack that from the beginning, because the personal genesis of this idea is, it's incredibly compelling. It's foundational.
It really is. You have to imagine this world just collapsing around him. His childhood set against this grim backdrop of post-World War II Europe.
Right.
His father was the Hungarian ambassador to Italy, and he made this incredibly principled, very difficult decision.
What happened?
Well, in 1948, a new communist government was installed in Budapest by Soviet armies, basically replacing the elected officials. And his father resigned his post in protest.
Wow, that takes courage.
Immense courage. But it had immediate severe consequences. They became stateless refugees in Italy. Yeah. In a country itself just recovering from war, hardly able to help its own people, let alone refugees. He calls it a senseless, brutal, and confusing childhood.
I can only imagine.
And the personal toll was just devastating. He talks about losing both his older half-brothers in the war.
Oh, no.
One died at 19 defending Budapest. The other just vanished into a Russian gulag, never heard from again.
God, that's heartbreaking.
And his grandfather starved, hiding in a basement. An aunt, just out of medical school, killed by an artillery shell while treating the wounded.
This wasn't abstract history for him at all.
Not at all. It was deeply personal. And it shaped this urgent quest for meaning, for resilience. How do you find purpose when everything falls apart?
It really puts the weight behind his later academic work into perspective. He mentions a specific moment, right? A pivotal moment.
Yes, a really vivid memory. Age 15, sweltering summer day in Rome, standing near the Termini railroad station.
Okay.
He felt utterly dependent, helpless, barely had bus fare. Meanwhile, a friend, whose father was also a diplomat, still lived this privileged life.
Oof, that contrast must have stung.
Deeply. He felt this shame, this helplessness he absolutely abhorred.
And then something happened.
Right. In that really low moment, he was holding a volume of Carl Jung's work. He called it a talisman, linking his past to this bleak present he was determined to change.
Interesting.
And suddenly this question just popped into his head. If he could write about such things, there is no reason why I could not also.
Wow. That's the spark.
That was it, the radical realization, the moment that set him on this unique path in psychology.
But it wasn't an easy path, especially when he got to America, right? The academic climate was different.
Very different. He arrived in Chicago in '56, took his exams, and quickly found out Carl Jung wasn't exactly mainstream in American psychology then.
So his inspiration wasn't well regarded.
Not really. He felt this deep frustration with the dominance of behaviorism and psychoanalysis. He felt they completely ignored these visionary Europeans who had shaped his thinking about human experience.
He wasn't interested in just the average or the negative.
Ew. Exactly. He wanted a scientific way to study what is most intriguing. Not the average, but the improbable. He was trying to reconcile understanding what is with what could be.
That totally explains why his work on flow felt so necessary, so innovative at the time.
Yeah.
He wasn't just building a theory. He was searching for answers rooted in his own survival, his own quest for meaning.
Precisely. And that brings us to a really fundamental concept, something maybe overlooked, but it's at the absolute heart of his work. Attention.
Attention, okay.
He basically says that what we think of as psychic energy is, in fact, our attention. And critically, it's finite. It's a limited resource.
Not energy like in physics, but mental focus.
Exactly. How we direct our awareness. And to grasp the limit, he gives this striking statistic. We can process only about 120 bits of information per second.
120 bits. Sounds like a lot, maybe, but is it?
Well, think about just understanding speech. When someone talks to you, you need about 60 bits per second just to comprehend the words.
Okay, that's half our capacity right there.
Right. It leaves very little bandwidth for anything else simultaneously. You know, processing your emotional reaction, remembering your grocery list, worrying about your next meeting.
It's a constant juggle inside a tiny mental space.
And the implication is profound. He points out, even though on this planet we are surrounded by over 6 billion other human beings, we cannot understand more than one of them at a time.
So our consciousness is incredibly selective, precious even.
Very. And if attention is that limited, that fundamental, then it logically follows that how attention is allocated determines the shape and content of one's life.
Wow. So it's not just what you do, but what you actively focus on that builds your reality.
Absolutely. What you give your finite mental energy to.
Which creates a kind of tension, right?
Yeah.
Because society socialization.
Yeah.
It's always competing for that attention. Schools, work, media.
Constantly. Everyone wants a piece of that 120 bits per second. But here's the crucial distinction, a really empowering insight he makes. It is an interesting fact that people can be forced to do practically anything, but their attention cannot be completely controlled by external means.
Explain that.
Even people in the most coercive situations, slaves, prisoners, assembly line workers, you can control their bodies, but you can't force their minds to pay undivided, genuine attention to your goals. Their thoughts can still be their own.
So our inner world retains some freedom, even under duress.
Yes, and this leads to this powerful idea. The intense concentration required for complex achievement appears to be available only when given willingly.
Ah, so that's the link to intrinsic motivation.
Exactly. It lays the groundwork. If you want peak performance, deep engagement, real satisfaction, your attention has to be given freely. You have to want to focus.
It's about reclaiming agency over your own mind, taking control of that limited resource.
Precisely. Which brings us to flow itself, the state that embodies this optimal allocation of attention.
Okay, let's get into flow. The core concept. Where did it start?
It started with his observations of artists, particularly painters. He noticed how they'd fall into this. Well, he called it a trance while working.
A trance.
Yeah, totally oblivious to their surroundings, hunger, fatigue, discomfort. None of it registered. They were just focused on the canvas, the next stroke.
So it wasn't about the finished painting, the fame, the money.
Not primarily, no. He realized it was the process, the doing. The involvement itself was the reward. That was the key insight.
The activity was rewarding in itself.
Exactly. And from observing artists and then athletes, surgeons, musicians, chess players, a whole range of people, he identified 6 core characteristics that consistently define this flow state.
Okay, let's break those down. What's the first one?
First is intense, focused concentration and a merging of action and awareness.
Merging action and awareness. What does that feel like?
It means you're not thinking about doing the thing. You are the doing. Your awareness isn't split. You're not self-consciously observing yourself. You're just in it. A rock climber he interviewed put it perfectly. When I start to climb, it's as if my memory input had been cut off. All I can remember is the last 30 seconds. All I can think ahead is the next 5 minutes. With tremendous concentration, the normal world is forgotten.
Wow, it's total immersion. Just the immediate present.
Total immersion. A composer said something similar. I am really quite oblivious to my surroundings. The phone could ring, the house burned down.
Doesn't register.
Doesn't register. And a basketball player said, if you step back and think about why you are so hot, all of a sudden you get creamed.
Haha. Yeah, thinking about it breaks the spell.
Exactly. The moment awareness splits, viewing the activity from the outside, flow is interrupted. You have to be fully in it.
Got it. What's number 2?
Second is a loss of reflective self-consciousness.
Loss of self-consciousness. So you stop worrying about how you look or sound.
Exactly. That everyday me, the social actor, the one worried about judgment, mistakes, appearances, it just disappears. The I, the more spontaneous, unself-conscious actor, takes over. You're not thinking about yourself as separate from the immediate activity.
But you're still aware of what you're doing.
Yeah. Oh, intensely aware, but of internal processes. Like the climber feels the rock, the chess player feels the workings of their mind, but you lose that distracting layer of self-monitoring, that self-construct. It's liberating.
Freedom from the inner critic, maybe.
That's a great way to put it. Okay, third characteristic. A pervasive sense of control.
Control, does that mean feeling powerful?
Not necessarily in an egotistical way. It's more a condition of not being worried by the possibility of lack of control. It's this underlying confidence that the situation is manageable, that you have the skills to meet the demands.
So it's less I am the master and more I can handle this.
Precisely. A dancer described it as feeling enormous power to affect something of grace and beauty. A chess player felt immense strength, like holding fate in their hands. And even in competition, it's often framed as control over your own limitations, not just beating the opponent. Think about rock climbers again.
Right, you mentioned they feel more in control climbing than driving.
Exactly. Which seems paradoxical, right? Climbing looks dangerous, but the dangers are finite, understandable, manageable through skill and attention. Driving has all sorts of unpredictable variables. Climbing offers clear challenges you can focus on mastering.
That makes sense. Clarity brings a sense of control. What's next?
Number 4 is clear and immediate feedback.
Okay, so you know right away how you're doing.
Instantly. The demands are coherent. The feedback is unambiguous. Did the ball go in? Did the code compile? Did the musical notes sound right? You don't have to guess.
You're not waiting for your annual review.
Haha, exactly. You're getting real-time data. The person is often too concerned with the experience to reflect on it. Like that basketball player who could lose track of the score because they were so absorbed in the immediate play-by-play feedback.
Total focus on the moment's feedback loop. Okay, number 5.
Fifth is the distortion of temporal experience.
Time flying.
That's the classic one. Hours feel like minutes. Or sometimes, in moments requiring very precise, rapid action, time might seem to slow down briefly, but usually it just evaporates.
You look up and it's dark outside.
Totally. You become untethered from the clock.
And the last one says it was crucial.
Yes. Number 6, and maybe the most fundamental, the activity is intrinsically rewarding.
Meaning the reward is in the doing.
Precisely. It's enjoyable in itself. The end goal, finishing the painting, winning the game, often becomes just an excuse for the process.
So you're not doing it for something else.
Right. You're doing it for the sheer experience. Csikszentmihalyi used the Greek term autotelic, auto meaning self, telos meaning goal, an activity whose goal is internal to itself. Play is fun, it's enjoyable, because the experience itself is worth it.
That shifts everything from outcome to process.
Fundamentally. And that intrinsic reward is what fuels flow, makes it self-sustaining, deeply fulfilling.
Okay, so those are the characteristics. How do we actually get into flow? You mentioned challenge and skill.
Right. That leads to his core model. The balance of challenges and skills, which he visualizes with the 8 channels of experience. This is the practical map.
The blueprint for engineering flow.
Kind of, yeah. The basic idea is simple. Flow happens when your perceived action capacities, your skills, basically match the perceived action opportunities, the challenges of the task.
Perceived is key there, right? It's subjective.
Absolutely. It's your assessment of the challenge and your assessment of your skill level. And he notes this balance is intrinsically fragile. It's always shifting.
Okay, so let's walk through these 8 channels. Maybe listeners can think about where their own activities fall.
Good idea. Let's start high. High challenges, but only average skills. That's arousal.
Arousal. Like stimulated, but maybe a bit stretched.
Exactly. You're engaged, maybe excited, but not fully comfortable, like tackling a tough new project or learning a complex new piece of music. It grabs your attention.
Okay. And then the sweet spot.
Flow. High challenges met with high skills. This is optimal. You're fully immersed, performing at your peak, enjoyment is high. Think expert surgeon, coder deep in a problem, athlete in the zone.
That's where the magic happens. What if skills are high, but challenges are just average?
That's control. You feel competent, comfortable, maybe even effortless, like an experienced driver on a familiar road or reading something you already know well. It's pleasant, positive, but less intense, less growth-oriented than flow.
Competence without the stretch. Makes sense. What about high skills, low challenge?
That's boredom. You're overqualified, understimulated, a highly skilled person doing repetitive, simple tasks. Restlessness sets in. You crave more engagement.
We've all been there. Okay, what about lower down the scale?
If challenges are low and skills are just average, that's relaxation. Low effort, pleasant, but not very engaging. Chatting with friends, a casual walk. Nice, but not flow.
And the bottom, low challenge, low skills.
That's apathy. Lack of interest, lack of engagement, lack of energy. Mindlessly scrolling, channel surfing. He called it a low point of psychic functioning. Often feels empty.
Okay, now the other side. When skills are low relative to challenges. Average challenge, low skills.
That's worry. You feel a bit out of your depth, uncertain. Maybe a student facing a new type of problem or starting a task that feels just beyond your current ability. Causes some apprehension.
And the final one. High challenge, low skills.
That's anxiety. Feeling truly overwhelmed, unprepared, incapable, the demands seem insurmountable. Facing a huge deadline you haven't started, or being thrown into a situation way over your head. High stress, very uncomfortable.
Okay, that's a comprehensive map, but you said it's dynamic.
Crucially dynamic. Feeling anxious or bored isn't just bad, it's feedback.
Feedback to do what?
To adjust. If you're bored, high skills, low challenge. The feeling prompts you to seek more challenge. If you're anxious, high challenge, low skills, you're prompted to build your skills or maybe break the challenge down into smaller pieces.
So these states push us back towards flow.
Exactly. This constant adjustment fosters growth. As you master challenges, your skills increase. The activity might become boring. So to stay in flow, you have to seek out progressively more complex challenges.
It's a growth cycle.
It is. He calls it the teleonomy of the self, this built-in drive towards complexity and growth. Think about learning an instrument. You master a simple song, what do you do next?
Look for a harder one.
Right, even if no one tells you to. That's the growth principle in action. So for daily life, the key is being aware. Am I bored? Am I anxious? And using that feeling as information to adjust the challenge skill balance.
That's incredibly practical. But how did he measure all this subjective stuff scientifically? That seems like the big hurdle.
It was a huge hurdle. And that's where he made another massive contribution, the experience sampling method, or ESM.
ESM, okay.
He knew traditional methods, questionnaires, interviews asking people to remember how they felt days or weeks ago were flawed.
Right. Memory is tricky. We misremember or rationalize.
Exactly. Our recall is fallible, colored by current moods, cultural expectations. You don't get the raw data.
So how did ESM work?
It was ingenious, especially for its time. He gave people electronic pagers, later programmed watches or calculators that would beep randomly throughout the day.
Like interrupting them.
Yep, 7 to 10 times a day for a week, usually. And whenever it beeped, they had to stop immediately and fill out a short questionnaire.
Right then and there.
Right then and there, asking things like, where were you? What were you doing? And then rating on scales, things like the challenge level, their skill level, concentration, happiness, tension, their immediate inner state.
So capturing moments as they happen.
Exactly. Sampling the stream of actual everyday experience in its natural context, that's what gives it ecological validity. It brought subjective experience into the realm of objective analysis in a way nothing else really had before.
A window into real-time inner life. What did it actually reveal?
Some fascinating things, often counterintuitive. Let's take the case study of Lorraine, a high school senior. During her ESM week, she got really bad news. Her exchange program to Spain was canceled. Big disappointment. And she had already skipped a fun trip with friends for a meeting about it.
Oh, double whammy.
Right. The ESM caught the mood shift immediately. In just over an hour after getting the news, her ratings went from very happy and quite friendly to sad and lonely. Real-time data.
Wow. What else did it show about her week?
A ton. How she spent her time 18% watching TV, only 3% studying. Her typical thoughts often quite critical of others. Her emotional patterns happiest with friends, lowest when alone.
Even though being alone was painful, she sought it sometimes.
Yeah, and the ESM data suggested why. She found it hard to concentrate with friends, so maybe she needed solitude to process things even though it felt bad. It showed this constant, difficult, dynamic alternation between people and solitude.
That's incredibly detailed insight into one person's life.
It really shows the method's power for understanding individuals. It's been used clinically, too. With bulimic women, for instance, it revealed clear patterns. Low moods before a binge, a sort of dissociative state durer, then control returning, along with guilt and shame after.
That real-time pattern must be invaluable for therapy.
Absolutely. It gets beyond the potentially unreliable stories people tell afterwards. It also revealed this general paradox about solitude.
What's that?
Consistently, across studies, people report lower moods when alone, more loneliness, boredom, irritability.
Seems intuitive.
Right. But here's the twist. Could that pain of solitude actually be necessary for its renewing effects? Like Lorraine needing to face disappointment alone to process it.
So maybe avoiding negative feelings isn't always the best strategy.
Possibly. Intriguingly, people who didn't report feeling worse alone often had lower average moods overall, suggesting maybe they weren't fully engaging with or processing the difficult stuff. Sometimes feeling the bad might be part of growth.
Fascinating. And is the method reliable?
Yeah.
Scientifically sound?
Yeah, studies show good reliability. Individual responses are pretty stable over a week and even hold up reasonably well over 2 years. ESM ratings of physical activity correlate with actual heart rate measurements. It differentiates body positions. It seems to get beyond surface-level responses and stereotypes to measure thoughts, feelings, actions as they actually happen.
An objective mirror to subjective life. Amazing.
So this data then lets us look deeper into intrinsic motivation, right? How that drives flow.
Exactly. And this is where we really see how flow can be actively cultivated. Let's define terms clearly first. Intrinsic motivation. Doing something for its own sake.
Because the doing is the reward. You wanted to do it.
Right. You wouldn't wish to be doing something else. Extrinsic motivation. Doing something to get something outside the activity itself.
For money, grades, praise, avoiding punishment, the had-to-do-it feeling.
Yeah, where you might wish you were doing something else. He gives a simple test. Would you do this if there was no external reward or punishment? If the answer is no, it's likely extrinsic.
Though most things are probably a mix, right? Oh, definitely. Like that student learning programming enjoys the challenge, intrinsic, but also knows it helps their career, extrinsic. Reality is messy.
But the impact of motivation on well-being is clear from the ESM data.
Strikingly clear. People consistently rate themselves happier and less tense when intrinsic motivation is higher. And here's the kicker. Sense of well-being seems to be influenced more by motivation than by the type of activity a person is actually engaged in.
Wow, stop there. It's not what you do, but why you do it, your inner orientation towards it, that matters most for happiness.
That seems to be what the data suggests. It's incredibly empowering. You can find joy, or at least engagement, in mundane tasks if you can shift your motivation towards the intrinsic, towards finding the inherent challenge or skill involved.
That has huge implications, even for society.
He thought so too. He warned that societies in which people cannot get intrinsic rewards from work and family life and must seek them exclusively in leisure are usually headed for trouble. He pointed to historical examples, like the late Roman Empire, resorting to more and more elaborate artificial stimulations, circuses, spectacles, things that drain psychic energy, drain attention, without building anything lasting.
A society hooked on external fixes, seeking fleeting pleasure, because deep engagement is missing elsewhere.
That's the concern. A powerful cautionary tale for today, maybe, with our focus on passive entertainment and consumption. Are we finding enough intrinsic reward in our core activities, work, family, community?
It's a deep question. So let's look at daily activities through this lens. Work versus leisure.
Yeah.
The ESM findings were surprising here.
Very surprising. You'd assume leisure is peak flow time, but for about a third of people studied, the activity most often associated with flow experiences was work.
Work, really?
Yeah. And people who reported more flow overall actually spent more time working and less time goofing off.
So hard work and deep involvement are linked to this playful, intrinsically rewarding state.
It seems so. It completely challenges the idea that work is drudgery and leisure is bliss.
Which leads to the paradox of leisure. What was that?
Well, data showed lower happiness during passive leisure activities, watching TV, casual reading, shopping, compared to more active, skill-based leisure. The more passive leisure people engaged in, the less happy they tended to be overall.
So vegging out might not actually be that restorative.
It might be more like mental idling, draining attention without giving much back in terms of real satisfaction or growth. Active engagement seems key, even in downtime.
There's also a paradox about studying.
Right. Homework is often rated low on happiness in the moment. No surprise there.
Definitely not.
But teenagers who studied more were actually happier overall throughout their week.
How does that work?
It shows that something negative at the state level in the moment can be positive at the trait level overall. Investing in your future, tackling challenges, even if unpleasant right now, contributes to long-term well-being, maybe a sense of competence or future possibilities.
Short-term pain for long-term gain in terms of well-being.
Something like that. It's an investment in future intrinsic rewards.
And did these patterns hold up across cultures? What makes people happy?
Remarkably consistent findings, comparing the US and Italy, for example. Highest happiness reported during sports and games, socializing, eating, and art and hobbies.
Active, engaging things, mostly.
Yes. It suggests a transcultural characteristic of a generic human mind, universal pathways to positive experience wired into us.
And the role of friends came up again.
Hugely important, especially for adolescents. They consistently felt best with friends. Friends make even routine activities more enjoyable, provide support, feedback, shared challenges. Social connection is a massive facilitator of positive experience.
Okay, so we see flow in daily life. How do we get better at finding it? This leads to the autotelic personality, right?
Exactly. Some people seem naturally better at finding flow. They actively seek out situations that balance challenge and skill. They have an autotelic personality.
But it's not just innate. You mentioned metaskills, things we can learn.
Yes, that's the empowering part. We can cultivate these metaskills to derive enjoyment more reliably.
Okay, what are they? How do we learn to be more autotelic?
First, fundamentally learn to focus attention on the present moment. Control that psychic energy. If your mind's wandering, no flow.
Mindfulness, essentially.
Very related. Second, define goals clearly and identify steps to reach them. Flow needs direction, even in play.
You need to know what you're aiming for, what the rules are.
Exactly. Third, learn to seek feedback and see it as information, not just judgment. Okay, that didn't work. What can I adjust? Not, oh, I failed.
Using feedback to learn and adapt. Crucial.
Fourth, actively manage the challenge-skill balance. Use boredom and anxiety as signals. Bored. Find a bigger challenge. Anxious. Build skills or simplify the task. Be proactive about staying in that optimal zone.
Okay, what else?
Fifth, develop the ability to tolerate the anxiety that comes with pushing your boundaries. Growth is often uncomfortable at first. You need to stick with it.
Lean into the discomfort zone a bit.
Right. And finally, crucially for anything long-term, delay gratification. Many deeply rewarding activities require upfront effort, practice, even frustration, before the flow kicks in consistently. Learning an instrument, mastering a craft.
You got to put in the work before the deep enjoyment comes.
Often, yes. And the payoff for cultivating these skills. Autotelic individuals report less stress even in demanding situations, have clearer goals, and generally experience more positive states. It makes your whole life more resilient, more fulfilling.
It's about actively building the capacity for enjoyment. This also connects creativity, doesn't it?
Profoundly. Csikszentmihalyi had a really interesting take here. He argued creativity isn't just problem solving, it's problem finding.
Problem finding. Seeing new questions, new possibilities.
Exactly. Identifying the novel challenges worth pursuing. That's the hallmark of real discovery, he thought.
And that kind of work requires incredible focus.
An inordinate amount of attention, as he put it, and perseverance. Remember Newton? How did he discover gravity? By thinking on it continually.
Constant, sustained attention, which needs intrinsic motivation.
Absolutely. Creative people enjoy the process itself. The discovery is the reward, as much as any external outcome, like fame or money. That's why they persist through uncertainty and failure when extrinsic rewards are often distant or non-existent.
So what traits did he associate with this creative persistence?
Things like dissatisfaction with the state of knowledge, always questioning, looking for better ways, fluid experimentation, adapting as you go, and the ability to delay closure, resist jumping to conclusions, let ideas develop.
Resisting easy answers, letting complexity unfold.
Right. But it's not purely solitary either. He stressed that ideas need social validation, support from a relevant community or field to be recognized as truly creative.
It needs a receptive environment, too.
Definitely. And his ESM study showed creative students, say, in math or science, invest way more psychic energy, more attention into their subject, even during leisure. Their attention is more focused, more socialized into productive channels.
This all builds towards a really grand vision, linking flow to evolution itself.
Yes, this is where it gets quite philosophical, but also very inspiring. He saw evolution fundamentally as the increasing complexity of matter, which results in increasing possibility for consciousness.
More complexity, more potential for awareness.
Right, and humans have the most intricate system, our brains, for coding and storing information.
And we extend that complexity outside ourselves, right? Through culture.
Exactly. Through cave paintings, buildings, books, computers, we store information externally, vastly enlarging the collective pool of knowledge we can potentially access and build upon.
He had a hunch about what makes humans unique in this.
Yeah, he suspected we have this innate thirst for pushing the envelope, this enjoyment of operating at our best, even beyond our best, sticking our necks out.
Unlike other animals who might be content once basic needs are met.
That was his hunch. We seem uniquely driven to seek growth, challenge, complexity for its own sake.
But this relates to the idea of the veils of Maya. What did he mean by that?
It's drawing on Eastern philosophy. The veils represent taking surface experience, our immediate sensations, desires, cultural assumptions as the ultimate reality, being trapped in the movie, so to speak.
Okay, so transcending that means?
Pulling aside the veils, stepping back and saying, okay, what are the underlying conditions here? My genetics, my cultural programming. Now, what do I choose to do?
Recognizing the script or the rules of the game instead of just blindly following them.
Precisely. Recognizing your actions have consequences, karma broadly, that you're part of a system, and consciously choosing to take a stand to act with intention rather than just being pushed around by internal drives or external pressures.
Becoming a conscious participant, not just a product of forces.
Yes. And this leads to a really profound idea about purpose. Evolution itself, he says, doesn't have a purpose in the human sense. It just happens.
Okay.
But he argues, because we are human, we can give it a purpose.
We can imbue the process with meaning.
Yes. We are now, in a way, responsible for evolution, for life. And how do we do that? By essentially endorsing complexity.
Endorsing complexity? How?
By looking for ways to enhance differentiation, uniqueness, skill development, and integration, connection, collaboration, finding meaning in something larger than yourself at every choice point in your life. When you choose growth, engagement, complexity over stagnation and apathy, you become evolution.
Wow. That's a powerful thought. Choosing flow isn't just personal. It's participating in the unfolding of life itself.
That's the ultimate implication he draws.
Okay, let's bring this back down to earth. As we wrap up, what are the most crucial practical takeaways for listeners wanting to cultivate a flow-rich life? He made a key distinction first, right? Between pleasure and enjoyment.
A critical distinction, challenging how we often think about happiness. He argued the old pleasure-seeking model is a false one.
So what's the difference?
Pleasure is about satisfying basic needs. Hunger, thirst, comfort. It's homeostatic, brings you back to baseline. It's conservative, doesn't involve growth. And it's genetically limited.
Yeah.
Feels good, but temporary, doesn't build anything.
Okay. Satisfaction of needs. What's enjoyment then?
Enjoyment is fundamentally different. It's open, growth-producing, and evolutionary. It involves breaking limits, stretching yourself, becoming more than you were before.
Like in sports, arts, challenging conversations, flow activities.
Exactly. It's the feeling that comes from overcoming challenges, developing skills. It leads to personal growth, deep satisfaction, lasting well-being. It builds complexity.
So pleasure is about equilibrium. Enjoyment is about growth.
A great summary. And this leads him to ask that really pointed question for all of us.
Which is?
Why do people choose to watch television over reading a challenging book, even when they know that their usual hedonic state during television is mild dysphoria, unhappiness, whereas the book can produce flow?
Ouch. Why do we choose passive comfort or even mild unhappiness over active engagement that we know feels better and helps us grow?
That's the core challenge, isn't it? It highlights the path of least resistance versus the path of optimal experience, a choice we make constantly.
So fostering flow requires conscious effort. What can people do?
Actively reflect. Look for ways to structure activities to better balance challenges and skills. Can you make a routine task more challenging? Set mini goals, seek feedback. If work is boring, can you proactively seek new challenges, learn new skills, innovate, be deliberate about engineering flow opportunities?
Don't just wait for it to happen.
Right. And beyond the personal, there's a societal angle too. We need to think about creating environments, schools, families, workplaces, communities that facilitate flow.
Not just focus on safety and comfort.
Exactly. Those are important. But an exclusive focus on them can be detrimental to optimal development if it breeds apathy. We need environments that encourage challenge, skill building, engagement. Understanding flow is crucial for anyone interested in genuinely improving quality of life, not just material well-being.
Which ties into the whole vision of positive psychology, which he co-founded.
Yes, shifting the focus from just fixing what's broken, fixing pathology, to actively understanding and building the factors that allow people, communities, societies to flourish, making normal life better, stronger, more productive, more meaningful.
Building on strengths and potential.
Precisely.
So the human mind, it seems, has evolved to seek this engagement, this growth. And if that I, that core sense of self, our agency, is really revealed when we tackle difficult, improbable tasks, when our actions depart from mere routine, then the final question for you, listening, becomes, what unlikely intention will you choose to fulfill? What challenge will you embrace to manifest your free self, to contribute to that ongoing evolution of complexity?
What will you willingly, freely devote your precious, finite attention to? Not because you have to, not for some external reward.
But because the process itself is deeply enjoyable, because it pushes you, helps you grow, and maybe, just maybe, pushes the world forward a tiny bit too.
That, I think, is the ultimate question Csikszentmihalyi leaves us with. The essence of flow.